Welcome everyone to the Leadership Circle here at EarthX in Dallas, Texas. I'm glad to see all of these self-designated leaders who are joining us this afternoon. This is a session that culminates 2.5 days of discussions that we have had, various groups of us, and you know that some of you were in some of those groups and others not, and I think I see a few new faces here as well. As we discussed on Monday, EarthX is unique among sustainability events in that we intentionally draw together 10 kinds of power, 10 kinds of communities, each of them with complementary power. And we find that as in an ecosystem, if we have niches that are concentrated among these different kinds of power, we have an ecosystem that generates much more value as a consequence, and it tends to be very positive value. So we have in the room here, we have cultural power, we have social power, we have financial power, we have political power, we have marketplace power. We have the power of civic organizations, we have the power of consumers and of women and of moms that bring financial power forward. We have the power of folks that bring every kind of resource that we need. Our responsibility here is to begin to take some of the best ideas, the most inspiring ideas that we've discussed, and identify those, and as specifically as we can, lay out objectives for us to pursue. The outcome of this day is that your days ahead will be easier than they would have otherwise been. You will have fewer things on your plate to do. This is not an attempt to add to your already overburdened plates. This is an attempt to harness that quality of nature, which is that when you have diverse parts together, you have a whole from which come emergent qualities, things that you can't predict, but things that serve you more than what you were doing before. So your lives should be easier and your level of fulfillment higher as a consequence of getting together today. Now, that doesn't mean to drop anything that you have as an objective, because I know we have in this room folks who have business objectives. They would like to sell more sustainable homes. They would like to sell more sustainable food. We have folks who have political objectives. They would like to pass certain pieces of legislation. There are regulatory and deployment objectives. There's an amazing set of things that are happening in California as we come to deploy on a piece of legislation called SB 54 that will draw billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars into investment in California around sustainability, and we can help to shape that as we go. And each of you have opportunities that others in the room can help to support without having to work harder themselves to do so, because what you're providing, what other people are providing, are making their jobs easier as well. So that's what we are looking to get to. We have a rubric. I've begun to use the term rubric because they use it in the schools now with all my kids. They all have a rubric. And I think, isn't a rubric just like a sheet of to-dos? Well, no, it's a rubric. This is what professionals do. So we have a rubric that we'll be filling out, and I would like you to put your name on this, your organization or affiliation. So this will be, we're not going to publish this, but we are going to use it with recognition of the people whose names are there so that we can help you in this process. So of course you're free to put anything or not that you'd like. But then, what are your most valuable takeaways from EarthX 2025? That is, maybe you got a contact, your relationship, an insight, knowledge, connection, whatever it is. What are your top priority policy and marketplace goals for advancing a more sustainable future? Maybe you're into regenerative agriculture, maybe you're into recycling, into a particular kind of recycling, advanced recycling. Maybe you want to clean up our political system. Maybe you want to elect a particular kind of lawmaker, whatever it is. what are your individual or organizational commitments inspired by EarthX 2025 for advancing a more sustainable future? So, and by commitments, again, I don't mean that you are taking on more, because you're going to come back on Monday and you'll go, how could I possibly have committed to that? I've got enough on my plate. We're looking here for commitments that are natural to your organization and natural to you and inspiring to you. And they may indeed cause you to work harder because you're more enthusiastic and you get a higher payback, but they are to be a relieving of your burdens. And then the food you serve and the food you need here. We have what resources do you bring to these commitments and goals that you can contribute, share, or trade, and then what resources do you need to pursue in those commitments? That is kind of the food you serve. What do you have to serve? Do you have knowledge and expertise that you can serve? Do you have a reputation and credibility? Others may need reputation and credibility to do their work successfully. Do you have key contacts and networks that you can serve? Do you have time and capacity? Do you have facilities and infrastructure? Do you own a hotel anywhere, for example, if you're a member of the Crow family? Are there donations or investments that you may want to make? Everyone is a philanthropist. Everyone is a philanthropist. And with the amount of money that just a typical middle-class person has in this culture, we can cause global change to happen with a very modest investment. So don't think of yourself as, well, I don't have the money to be a philanthropist. If you're here, you already have demonstrated that you have the money to be a philanthropist. Or do you have a community or cultural influence, a social influence? So all those things. Or do you need those things, political or legal influence? Do you need those things? Is that food that will help you to support your organization? So as we get there, we're going to have conversations to help us get there. But I want to invite just a couple of people who you may not know to introduce themselves here. Now, a couple of them you've probably heard from already, but a couple not. So I want to just invite Peter Fikowski briefly. Peter, you've been involved with our work for a long time, and you're one of the leaders in restoring the global ecosystem in ways that can be sustainable. Can you just 1 minute or so explain what you're up to and what your conference tomorrow is all about?
Sure. Is there a mic?
At your table, there should be one.
There you go. There you go.
So I'm Peter Fikowski, and I lead the field of climate restoration, which is the idea that we all want to give our children a safe climate like we were given. It has not been on the table. It's not on the UN table. And it's something that we as humans all want. And so we want to put it on the table. It turns out that nature has restored the climate before ice ages many times. We know how to do it. And our job as leaders is to get the idea on the table, get the funding in place, and make it happen. The goal is by 2030 to have CO2 levels going back down. And by 2050, our children will have the same CO2 levels and climate that we had when we were kids.
Now, this is an opportunity that we began 2 years ago when Van Jones came to town, and we had conversations about how we can harness the power of the ocean and what the ocean most naturally wants to do to absorb carbon better. And this is real. This is something that we're deploying on. So we're very excited to have Peter here to talk about that. Now, Michael Sonnenfeld has been here with us without you even knowing it in the form of John Sturman and Hillary Patton, and was the leading early investor donor to enable the En-ROADS tool to come to fruition. And we all experienced, some of us at least experienced En-ROADS on Monday, and others will experience it tomorrow, to show people a pragmatic way of understanding, distilling all that massive MIT data to help inform us to make the most powerful decisions that we can on climate. And Michael, do you want to just say something about your work and that project and anything else that
I think you've overplayed my impact on En-ROADS. John had developed it long before I got involved. But I think when I'm being here, I have a climate fund that's right now quite shaky given the economy, and particular in venture capital. And there's lots of reasons why that should be obvious why this is not a great time for venture climate if you have to rely on the well-functioning of the financial markets. But I think just a commitment back to the basics, that it's science, it's not opinion. Climate is advancing, and unless we do more, the dream that you just talked about will get further and further away from reality. So I'm most struck simply by being in a community of people who are interested in doing that.
Terrific, terrific. Well, we're glad to have you here, and we know we'll get another demonstration of En-ROADS tomorrow with another group of people here at the conference. And I would like to call, although I didn't warn Mark in advance, but Mark Murray from Californians Against Waste to just give us a few words about what's happening with the SB 54 world in California, because there is going to be a tremendous amount of activity and impact from that legislation, and it will have a global impact, no doubt. And I think that mic will just magically turn on as soon as you start talking, Mark. But give us a little sense of what's up
Sure.
with SB 54.
So Mark Murray with the environmental group Californians Against Waste. And I think two things that I want to just touch on. Number one is, Bill has been... Sorry.
Of course it's you.
Listening to you.
My son. So two things. Number one is that we're SB 54, which is this producer responsibility policy, which the brand owners have basically acquiesced to in terms of taking responsibility for setting up the systems for recycling, packaging, and a two-part test of recycling, collection, access to curbside recycling, as well as end use. There's got to be an end user. Otherwise, it doesn't qualify as recycling. The first test of that policy is really the definitions of recycling and what can call itself a recyclable material or package and what can't. And that list has come out. That characterization study, that analysis has come out. And there's a number of materials that we think of as potentially being recyclable that are on the cusp that may not make the list. And for a lot of packaging, for a lot of brand owners and a lot of packaging manufacturers, that is an existential threat for them. So they're going to have to get their shit together quickly in terms of creating both that access, making it attractive for the collection infrastructure, but also creating end-use markets. So that's the overall framework. I do want to say that, as Bill has noted and we talked about yesterday, California has this plethora of existing policies, waste reduction, recycling policies, methane reduction policies. And what I could really use is for folks in other states to take a look at those and to start to embrace those policies. And what I can be is a resource for taking those model California policies and shopping them around in other states. That's what's going to help us move the ball in California, is if other folks are embracing these policies in other places.
Terrific,
So, thanks.
terrific. So, Doozy, can we put up what the leadership circle is and where we are carrying this forward? So, the leadership circle, let's see, it's not on mine, so I can't tell what it is but I know what it is because we formed it. Leadership circle. A leadership circle is a circle of leaders from a variety, these 10 categories of power, if you will. All of these 10 categories of power have positive influence on one another, particularly in that succession there, but of course across as well. And we make sure that we have all of these folks represented in these processes. So this is a forum for philanthropists, corporate leaders, experts, activists, influencers, and strategists to learn, build relationships, and collaborate. And you all are now, should you choose to remain so, members of and participants in this, as is anyone who has registered for EarthX and has participated this year or may participate next year. We will be every month having conversations by Zoom to track our progress on the issues and priorities that you are setting for us, with us today. So this is why you and we have particular impact based on what we decide to do today. Now, here are the terms of engagement. This is not actually a Chatham House rule meeting room, so be aware of that when you say it is public in this house. So Chatham House rule doesn't apply there. This is not an off-the-record. This is not an off-the-record meeting. Some of our meetings are, and we define them as such, and you'll know that. But know that what you're saying is public, potentially, and so be aware of that. At the same time, we are about being curious and open to learning. We are about listening and hearing and feeling what other people are feeling and expressing. We are into showing respect and suspending judgment. Respect is a door opener, and we want to respect every lifestyle and every person and perspective, the political perspective, cultural norm, whatever it is. Look for common ground, of course. We look for those areas where we agree on a method or an end, even if we don't agree on everything. And we're also looking for those complementary areas where something that you support may complement something that I support as well. We are looking to be authentic and to welcome that from others, to share what's important to us, speak authentically from your personal and heartfelt experience, and be considerate of others as we do it. To be purposeful and to the point, which I'll do right now, to own and guide the conversation. Are we okay with these terms of engagement? Is there anyone that objects to these terms of engagement? Hearing no objections, we are now in on the terms of engagement. And these are our 4 guiding principles. No demons, no denial, no excuses, no delays. We don't recognize demons as a force. We see the human. We are the human. We try to be our best and invite the best of others. No denial. Embrace the truth. Know that it's complicated. It's not simple. The truth is a complicated thing, and sometimes it changes from moment to moment and place to place. So we are not in denial of those truths. No excuses. Embrace the power that we have. This is not a room where you say, well, if only the billionaires would do this, or if only the United Nations would take action, or those terrible people in Congress, or the president in the White House, and all that. It's not our fault. It's not my fault. It's your fault. We are not victims. We are not children. We are not demanding the action of others while we sit aside. We are actually engaged in the process ourselves. And no delays. We start now. So let's start now. Doozy, do you want to just explain? Well, let's see. 3 policy goals. These are policy goals that we've set over the last 6 years here at EarthX, and they are general categories of policies that are supported overwhelmingly by 70% plus of the population when people have a chance to actually converse with one another. Clean energy choices, circular economy, and conservation. These are things that draw us together. And these are specific 10 marketplace objectives that began as 6 ocean objectives and have expanded into 10 overall marketplace objectives. Each one of these is doable. Each one of these has corporate heroes that are leading these efforts. And each one of them we can have action on. And thanks to Cohen's Kurziniers, they're the founder of Sustainable Brands, we've identified the set of 10 corporate heroes, the first step for those. But these are the marketplace objectives that we've set. You are free to take those, apply them, refine them, add to them, subtract, and so on. And then this is a piece that I had, and Trammell and I published just recently in the Chronicle of Philanthropy on 7 things that climate philanthropy gets wrong and how we can do it better. Climate philanthropy has, in many ways, I would say, been a catastrophic failure in the last generation overall. Not because any individual philanthropist has made that happen, but because overall we've gone backwards. The climate is still getting worse. The climate is getting hotter. Atmospheric carbon is going up. The problem is getting worse, and it's more politicized than ever. So we need to look at ourselves as philanthropists and say, maybe we need a different strategy. Maybe we need to try some different things. And we put 7 ideas on the table to help to do that. This conversation today will help to redefine the priorities that some philanthropists set. So there we are. I have set the table. And Doozy, can you just explain what we'll be doing at those tables now?
Excellent. Okay. Well, the first thing we're asking you to do today is we want you to spend time getting to know the people at your table. So if you could please introduce yourselves to the others at your table, ideally somewhat briefly, name, organization, maybe what brings you to EarthX. And then we would like to reflect on the days we've spent so far at EarthX, including maybe thinking about the sessions we've had, the people we've met, the projects we've learned about, the insights we've learned, and we'd like to talk about what are your most valuable takeaways from EarthX thus far, and specifically perhaps from the Energy and Circular Economy conferences, but anything. And then we would like one person from each table to then report back. We'll be interested in what you all discuss. We're going to take about 20 minutes for that. Please let me know if you have any questions.
I hear some fascinating discussions happening, and I think some real learning happening here. So, and I'm going to call on a couple of folks to report out and also give us some perspective. So, earlier today, I had a great conversation with one of our participants, Eric Amio. I don't think Eric is in the room here, but we were talking about what specifically we can do in the next year to advance his goals, our goals, and we got very specific. What are we going to, what's going to be passed, what's going to be sold, what transactions are going to happen, what are we going to deliver? And I'd like people to think in terms of those as we report out from the tables. I'd like to spend a couple minutes before I get reports from each of the tables for a bigger picture and a smaller picture. And so I hope I'm not surprising Michael Sonnenfeld, but I'd like to ask a question that I intend to ask you tomorrow, Michael, in a different group. And that is, we are in a very confused moment right now as a world. We are at what Winston Churchill's called it something like the uncertain era. We really do not know what is next in history for us. Things are so jumbled. Things that were integrated have disintegrated or have begun to disintegrate, to come apart. And they're going to come back together, and we're going to help to shape how they come back together. But because you, Michael, have been at it in at least 3 different ways, as an investor, as a philanthropist, as a political activist, and so on, how do you look at these times of change now, and what approaches, what might you advise that we take on as mental frames for dealing with times like this?
So the work that I've done has been to try and use these 3 separate realms, philanthropy, finance, and politics, to all work together. And many of you probably are active in one of those realms, a couple in 2, and a few in 3. It takes a certain kind of skill set, maybe a level of resources or time to be able to try and integrate them. The simplest is on the En-ROADS model some of you have seen that I work on with MIT informs our investment in the climate space, because we understand where their priorities, and that then allows us to work with politicians to frame policies. What comes to mind, this is sort of a free association, Bill, that you're asking, is one of the companies that we back is one of the fastest growing renewable power companies. You can look it up. It's a company called Bright Night. And it's a 5-year-old startup with a 30 gigawatt pipeline of renewable projects. It's a rather remarkable feat to go from a standing start to 30 gigawatts. I invested in a renewable company, but to survive in the current climate, they realized that you can accelerate the deployment of solar by putting a gas peaker plant attached to it, because the problem with renewable and solar and wind is, how do you deliver power to customers when the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing? And the solution today is with batteries. That's the time shifter, but you can do it much cheaper with a gas peaker plant. And I only use that because 6 months ago, if you said to me, would you consider backing a gas peaker plant It wouldn't have been within the mandate of the fund that I run or my mindset. But today, if the price to accelerate renewable adoption, wind and solar, is to attach a gas peaker plant to it, and you compare that to the reduction in coal, you fall into the gray zone, which is gas proponents say it's the transition fuel and better to use gas than coal. People who understand the magnitude of the problem say you can't use any fossil fuels because you're going to accelerate the problem what you do. But in the short term, if the price to get more solar deployed and wind is a gas peaker plant, today I'll take it. I'm not sure if that's an example.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
We're accepting a truth, but not applying it in a simplistic way that leads to a counter result. A truth being we need to move beyond fossil fuels, but that doesn't translate into let's shut down all fossil fuels right now, because in so doing we would end up shutting down the solar or reducing the solar. John Sturman, I was going to ask you anyway, so now your timing is perfect. What perspectives can you give us on where we are with regard to climate and in this complex political, social, economic situation?
Well, ask me something easy, Bill. So before I say anything else about that, just following on and building on what Michael just said, the Lawrence Berkeley Lab just a couple of years ago did a study, and what they found was that by underwriting efficiency improvements for their customers, gas utilities could meet the need for people to have heat in the winter and cool in the summer and hot water and everything that gas could do for you at 40% of the cost of providing new supply. And efficiency is typically greatly undervalued as a climate solution. Because you all got to remember, nobody wants a ton of coal or a barrel of oil or a therm of natural gas. What they want is warm in the winter, cool in the summer, light when you flip the switch, and access to good, decent jobs, education, healthcare, and cultural opportunities, connection with other people. Those are the needs people have and deserve, not energy per se. So efficiency is the fastest, safest, cheapest way to get where we want to go, and it cuts emissions and helps with the climate.
Now, I think efficiency is sexy. Like the sexiest car to me is like the used
Absolutely.
to be the Honda Civic used to be. It's like you do anything in a small space. It's like amazing. But how do you make efficiency sexy to other people?
So that's hard to do. I mean, in my own house, my wife and I did a deep energy retrofit 10 years ago. So lots of extra insulation, really good windows, LED lighting, efficient appliances, completely got rid of the gas that was providing heat and hot water, air source heat pumps and heat pump hot water and solar on the roof. People come by all the time and say, tell me about your solar panels, because they can see them.
Yes.
Nobody ever comes by and says, tell me about your insulation and your windows and your 1 gallon per flush toilets. And that's kind of a shame, because those are the things that made it possible for us to make 30% more energy than we have used over the past decade.
Yeah, I was just remembering the moment my mom told me, get the bricks out of the back of the toilet in the 1960s, when I was trying to save water, and I was doing everything. Put 1 brick in. If that helps, put 2 bricks in. And before long, the bricks are building up in other ways. So it was not
You want
necessarily
a
a pretty
piece
thing.
of granite. Well, first get a 1 gallon per flush toilet.
Yes, well,
don't put a brick in.
Those were
it'll
not allowed.
dissolve.
Those
You
were
want
not
a piece of
around at
granite.
the time. So I was doing what we eco folks were doing at the time. So I want to ask also Hillary Brasseth. You run Open Secrets, and Open Secrets deals with is an amazing database of political contributions and so on, where the money is flowing. And we have a unique situation now where money seems to be flowing in a lot of different directions, and it's almost like the nature of that whole enterprise of watching the flow of money is changing. Give us a little bit of any confusion that you have about where we are in understanding the role of money in politics and how that may play out in the years ahead.
I think
sorry to
it's
put you on the spot for this.
all good. We were speaking about this yesterday, and I think this is absolutely worth everyone paying attention to. We have open data available on our website for free, opensecrets.org. And so, we can all make verbal commitments about what we're all going to do in, the face of climate, but really what matters is where the dollars are flowing. And so I encourage everyone to think about accountability as a real necessary mechanism in making sure that we make progress on these goals. We have a specific page on our website that slices our data specific to climate. We pull all of the energy organizations as well as the environmental rights organizations, and we do side-by-side comparisons for how much money is flowing via lobbying or campaign contributions from the energy companies relative to the environmental rights groups. And it's no surprise here, the energy groups lobby at 6 times more than the environmental rights groups. So there's just vastly more money going into that side of the equation than the opposite, and heavily toward the right side of the aisle. And so thinking about how do we broaden the flow of money and how do we make sure that it's used as a tool for accountability. And it's no secret, now more than ever, there's more and more money going into our political system as well. So if you care about climate, your second most important issue should be money in politics. And there are a lot of also great organizations that are working to curb the influence or make more equitable the influence of money in politics.
One of the insights that I've gotten over the last few years in talking to corporate folks and other donors in politics is that the dynamics are different from what I might have assumed. It's not so much, I would say, and I'll use this as a personal opinion, not as any institutional, but that the money that flows in politics is not so much the person writing the check has the power to cause the person receiving the check to take an action so much as it's become the other way around. It's just a part of the expectation that if you do have money, you're going to write a big check. And if you don't write a big check, then you're subject to punishment. And so it's not so much, I'm going to write a big check so that I get this favor from government. It's more like I have to write a big check just to survive, because that is an expected part of the process. And so I know a lot of CEOs. What's that?
Even now moved to DC.
Yeah, and now I got to move to DC, and I got to buy this, and I got to buy that, and it's an orchestrated. I wouldn't call it a shakedown. Wouldn't want to call it a shakedown, but maybe it is a shakedown. Maybe it's organized bribery, or maybe it's a system of financing a political industry that thrives on keeping us divided, so that it has control of the $4.5 trillion that we spend every year. It could be something related to that. I don't know, but we all have an interest in maybe having a system that is more oriented towards solving our problems. And, so one of the things that we would like to do is to put real problems on the table and say, there's a systemic problem here. We can't blame anybody, not even the donors. I mean, they're like caught, they're trapped. I've got CEOs who say, I don't want to ever make another political contribution in my life, but if it means the survival or the not survival of my company, I got to consider that. What am I going to do? So we have a community problem. There's maybe one little $30 billion industry that that we need to deal with here. Give them another way to make good money, and that's a part of our equation here. So didn't intend to go too deep into that, but what's that?
Which industry is the 30 billion?
Well, it would be the political power brokerage industry, and again, it's not a set of demons. These are people who, like everybody else, they're like doing their job the way their job is structured to be done. I go out, I raise money, I plant a little, what do they call it? A milker bill over here. The milker bill threatens an industry. The industry pays money. I put another little milker bill over here. Another industry pays money. I put in a milker bill that milks two sides at once. It's like a profit maximization, system. It's a business model, and it raises, $30 billion a year or so. In exchange for, managing that $4.5 trillion budget. That we have. If you don't have a functioning democracy, then that's what happens. And the way to get a non-functioning democracy is to divide the people 50-50 into red and blue, warring committees, so that they battle each other. And you don't even have to try. The market kind of does that. It's already done it without a lot of people consciously planning it. But a lot of people, of course, just exploiting it because that's the way business is done and they can't see anything else to do. The only way we get out of that is by working as a community, multiple people. So in any case, there's another problem that we face with some solutions that only come when we stop demonizing each other and just start recognizing the systemic challenges that we face. So let's go table to table here. And I'd love to hear some of the ideas that we have. And then we're going to get as specific as we can with what do we want to accomplish? Is there a piece of legislation you want to pass? Is there a regulation that you would like to see in place? Is there a change in the marketplace? Is there demand for a kind of housing, a kind of community, a kind of product, anything like that? So let's just start with the table here. Who would like to give us a minute or so?
We didn't really get to that point in the conversation, but I'll just say as an elected official,
Yeah.
I think a really critical thing that we all need to be doing is having conversations in our communities about the importance of people getting engaged or staying engaged and actually thinking about either running for office or supporting good candidates, but really emphasizing the importance of voting. The fact that 90 million people sat out the last presidential election is still hard for me to fathom. There was so much at stake, and there's even more at stake now. So I think those basic conversations about the importance of democracy is part of what we have to do.
So I hear from that, importance of voting, so a system to promote voting might be a good project for us to become a part of. There are lots of people doing those things. Maybe we adjunct to them. Maybe they become a part of our community, so we don't have to do it all again. And then running for office. Maybe we should have some goals about running for office in particular areas. Maybe there are some people that want to be known. Now none of our organizations are probably political organizations, and we're not endorsing anyone or doing any campaigning activity and so on. I want to just make that clear. And EarthX is a 501c3 and has nothing to do with any of that stuff. But if people want to run for office, they want to run for office, and we are a community, and we can aspire and help them aspire to that. Any other takeaways you want to share? Yes, yeah.
And we have a mic right here.
Yes, so I came a little late, and so one of the things I did that was engage in listening to the people, to my table mates. And so I think that's sort of one of the key things that I think is important always, is listening. I always feel that I learn a lot when I just sort of sit back and, there's so many wonderful people doing great things. And so just kind of learning more, and then sometimes you can see the connections between things that seemed very disparate.
So you found some connections that you didn't necessarily know were there.
Well, thank you for this activity. My name is Jorge, and I'm from Colombia. I live 23 years in Miami, Florida. I am not a U.S. citizen. I'm a data dreamer, focused on technology and expanding and building the startup ecosystem in South Florida. I built the startup ecosystem in South Florida for over 20 years, which is right now the crypto capital of the world. And I know there's a lot of questions on that, and this is why I'm here for, because I come from this background of the old environmental protection, then elevating consciousness to what is sustainability. And now my invitation and my last reflection is to embrace regeneration as another level of consciousness to help Mother Earth really advance and accelerate the process of healing. And this is what I'm here for, bringing this Industry 4.0 technologies that I'm an expert on. Thank you.
Terrific, terrific. Well, the regenerative agriculture and regenerative technologies then is one of our 10 top marketplace goals, and we'll want to be advancing that. The table back here, what have we got? We can go in any order you would like. If you want to go for it, go for it.
Sure. So I go by Inventor Michael. I've been here from Colorado. We've driven a semi-truck that is equipped with a hybrid conversion system that uses solar to making independent battery-driven pumped electrolysis to actually get significantly improved fuel economy. So I've been at this for 12 years, and I saw fuel and our fuel consumption as a species, as the greatest problem we could possibly solve. All right, so there's a lot of things that when you look at it, it looks like money, and there's a lot of trim problems that need to be solved, but the root cause of our struggle as a species is fuel consumption. All right, so we've got billions of vehicles moving everything everywhere, billions of dollars of stuff that is moved. Your Amazon products, your groceries, your across the ocean, everything burning diesel. We don't talk about it, and I can assure you we're not permitted to actually work on it. And so we're build a new vehicle, build a new engine, build a whole new vehicle manufacturing thing, but nothing has been done for the world that exists today. And so outside this hotel is our semi-truck that is a retrofit to get it better fuel economy that can be built for pretty cheap, all things considered, and systemically applied across the human race as a solution to reduce that fuel consumption. So in doing so, you liberate enough resources to finish everything else. So if you notice that the innovation is a big, giant money chase that way of who can get the money from everybody, and money is a very closely guarded thing with everyone. But if we lived in a world where fuel consumption liberated enough resources, there'd be enough to go around. I can tell you right now that living with an idea trapped in your head when you're not able to go out and actually try it is detrimental to our species. We've treated innovators, people with actual things that way, very hard. It's a big, dog and pony show as well. We made it into pageantry and all sorts of things of refinement. And so this person lives with this idea until they're permitted to pass. And the time they spent focused on that, what if they get to the end and that idea fails? Well, they've wasted all that time that they could have gone out into their community and found something that worked. Mm-hmm. So in fixing the fuel consumption problem of our species, you can liberate enough resources to go through and fix everything else. And so that is what I've spent time doing. We've Dino confirmed it. We've proven that it's the right strategy. This is a brute forcible strategy that was prevented in the past because technology didn't match. So we now use big batteries that have been innovated by the solar industry, by every other industry using big batteries. Now we have big ones big enough to make a difference. So it's a scalable solution all the way up through, and it kind of goes for what I think all of y'all are here to kind of see, and in a sense, to get the job done. So that's the pathway that I selected, and I've come a long way for doing so.
Terrific. Well, things are disintegrating and reintegrating now. So
come see the truck. It's outside. We'd love
to. Others from the table there. What do you want to share about your findings?
Anybody?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're the table primarily of students, which they had to depart for another event, but there are people working in honeybees and farming, and they had a conversation, them and inventor Mike, about scalability and how one of the chief innovations is making things mobile and able to be transported and used by different populations for sometimes temporary purposes in order to get things moving. So farming and scalability go together, and that's one of the aspects of the future that we're looking forward to.
All right. Others?
Very briefly, the same group of enterprising college students who are doing beekeeping, and they're up for, I think, the EarthX Challenge. I think that's where they're pitching right now. I mentioned that they got a real introduction by fire to the real politics of the area, where because there's an SB 819 bill in Texas, which basically calls for data centers to be funded by big gas, big oil, big fossil fuel companies instead of solar. The original idea was to have it funded by solar, and they saw, the upfront, the lobbying and the stuff.
Fueled by solar, or what?
The data centers to be fueled by solar. Yeah. Fueled yes.
by solar, or fueled by.
Fueled by solar. That was the original idea, okay. But it's being voted. It's been voted to have it fueled instead by big oil companies because they have the lobbyists. So.
And where was that? I'm sorry.
It's in Texas.
In Texas.
XB 819. They kept saying.
Is it okay? All right. And I see a hand over here.
Hello, my name is Peter Kuo. I was the former vice chairman of the California Republican Party, so don't hold that against me. But this is my second EarthX. I was here last year, same month. And I came here originally last year just to find out what the environmentalist is all about. I have very little expectation, but when I walked in the door last year, I did a 180. And from Donald Trump's campaign director in California, I sort of start to think in my head, what are the messaging? Where do we fail? I mean, how do we, something environmental that people can die from become a spit war? We just say, oh, AOC is flying in private jets. And, and those are the things that I think we failed totally in the messaging of trying to convince both sides why we need to do this. Why are we here today? We're here today for cleaner air, more efficient engines, a better data center that is using renewable energy. And those are common sense solutions. I just don't see the government that we're adopting. So Dave Rice and I, we formed a company called Sustainable Impact Alliance Solutions. Yes, Sustainable Impact Alliance Solutions, focusing on bringing the real solutions to these problems that we're having. So instead of big wars, talk about carbon credit. That's focused on carbon capturing. So those are the things we can all agree on, not just Republicans or Democrats. And I think Trumbull did say it best in his book, saying that this Earth, we're pulling left from the Democrats, and the Republicans are pulling it from the right to pull it apart, literally, to destroy it. And I felt that I want to make sure that his vision of this unified Earth that we all can leave with our kids, now next generations, can survive. And that's why I'm here today. I get so many great ideas from attending this meeting in the last 4 days. And a year ago, I tell you, we're here to teach people how to teach fiction so we can change the world. And hopefully everybody have that same goal in mind so we can fulfill the 17 SDGs drafted by the UN.
What would you tell the other people who might be considering coming to EarthX this next year?
Just come. And you will find so many amazing things that will change your ideas about politics and environment.
Are you more of an optimist now?
I'm very optimistic that we can make it happen. In fact, we're talking about data centers that is going to be run by renewable energies very, very soon. So, in fact, we're working on a sovereignty data center. We want to build a data center for each country so that they can keep their own data for their own citizens. However, the climate data needs to be shared across the globe so we can combat this things that's going to happen.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Do you
Yeah.
have guidance on how we might better communicate with other Republicans to enable the kind of
Yes.
that you've had the experience?
The easiest way, because 50 states is run like 50 countries, and each states have their own Republican Party. And just on your travel carbon output alone, I can have my state party adopt that, right, immediately. And again, but the most important message that we need to convey to the other side, my side, was that the climate change eventually, and present them with the data. This is what is going to happen if we don't do anything today. Just like the speaker this morning, when did you know you know? And you didn't do anything. And that's a part I didn't know until last year. So that fundamental message, the data, the science, got to be the foundations of everything that we do, so that we can work together. Otherwise, everything we do here is going to be negated by the other side, and that's 47%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
terrific.
that was
Thank
it.
you for coming. Yes, right here.
Discussion about this deeply.
Is this on? So,
I think they will turn it on.
yeah, what we talked about dovetails really well with what you were just discussing, and I was voted as the spokesperson here, so I'm going to step in. We had a lot of different kinds of people at our table, which was really exciting for me. I love hearing different points of view, and the takeaways that came out of it was one of the things we were all agreeing upon is that nature is conservative. You know, nature has an amazing ability to utilize every single aspect of everything that it creates. And out of that conversation, we definitely were impressed, all of us, by the desire to let go of demonization and, you know, to really let go of blaming anybody else for what's happening and to become the adults in the situation and go ahead and make different choices and be empowered to create change. So that was really important to us. One of the things that I really learned from one of our people here was consider the messenger, not just the message. Kind of relates to what you were saying. You know, bring in people who are trusted, who are part of the fabric of the community that you're speaking with, and let the message come through them, because they're going to be able to hear it more clearly. That was really powerful for me. So I hope you guys like that as well. Just have conversations. Just keep talking with people, keep listening to where they're coming from. And if they're presenting something, you weren't here, but we included you in the conversation. If they're including something that is outside something that you're familiar with, maybe just pause for a second, have an open mind, and see where that might take you. So that seemed really important. And yeah, and of course we talked about travel. My name is Joy and I own a sustainable luxury travel company. And we talked about how travel can create opportunities for building compassion, for learning about how other people live and trying to embrace what they're doing as being just as valid as what we're all doing. And how important that is, and how sad it would be for climate change to come on full force, and for us not to be ready with some forms of travel that are sustainable, because we'll lose the ability to travel if we don't figure out how to do it more sustainably, and that will be a very different world. So that was our table.
All right, terrific. So, yes, Marisa.
So, you know, what I've been gathering both from our table and just conversations with everyone here is, as you've named, it's a really confusing time. And things are very perplexing and we have no idea what's in the future. And what I'm seeing is that there's a major information gap here missing, that people are not doing the self-work of knowing themselves better and what are the internal biases. Einstein says we can't solve problems the same state of mind that created them. And so to bring awareness to ourselves, you know, we have physical fitness, we're all taking care of our bodies. We all know about hygiene, washing our hands, but what is happening to bring awareness to our minds and the mindset that we come to all our problem solving with. And so my name is Marisa Sturtz. I'm a steward of the Global Psychedelic Society, and we're really, here to offer that working with psychedelics or meditation, any sort of tool that brings awareness to mind can help us come to solving these problems from a sovereign place and not just being ran by the programs that we've been indoctrinated with. Thank you.
Just to add to that a little bit, I think one of the biases built into the media marketplace, because humans respond to fear more instantly than they respond to hope, simply because if we don't respond to fear, then we are killed and we can't be hopeful. This makes logical sense, but hope takes a back seat, as we talked about the other day, in real dollar terms. When you recruit dollars on the basis of fear, you raise 2.5 times as much per dollar spent as when you try to raise money on the basis of hope. Mark Murray and I have learned that. And that's why demons sell so well, and that's why fear sells so well. Not because we all like fear more than hope, but because our hopes depend on us overcoming what is a threat to us. There are groups of people out there that are founded on the idea and the mission of hope and of that thing called love and human connection. And there are a whole coalition of folks, or there needs to be a coalition, I would say, of the love-focused right, which tends to be the evangelical and religious community, the love-focused left, which tends to be the kind of new age progressive, the optimistic half of the left. The folks who generally, who I experience in the psychedelics community, are generally speaking, they have escaped, places of fear and pain and so on, and they come together, unifying with one another, moms are all about hope. Moms are all about, dedicating the future and doing what's best for their children. They will not let anything stand in their way. This is a power that I would like us to harness and to bring the communities of hope together so that hope becomes a driving force. And all the communities that we'll be bringing in, I'll be recruiting communities to be here next year who are in that set, because I think they are complementary to one another. So I know that we haven't heard from this table right here yet. What do you have to report back to us?
Okay, so our team here, we have varying ranges of expertise and longevity in sustainability. So some folks are just dipping their toes in the pool. Some folks have been around for 30, 40 years. One key thing that we talked about was gaining more info to inform projects, but also any takeaways that we do experience from things like legislation. We always talk about the successes and what worked, but we never really set up the next group of people who are going to try and attempt the same thing about the failures and the pitfalls that you should avoid. So talking about the successes are really great, but if you can help save those headaches for the next group who wants to follow in your footsteps by discussing the failures in either legislation or corporate strategies is going to be just as important. Also, data capture to make the business case for sustainability. We talk a lot about data, but sometimes it's really hard to capture. And luckily, we've got some new systems, AI coming out. All of that can do a lot of automation for us. And also, a big one for me that just stood out was how departments within corporations or within even governments are so incredibly siloed, and they don't talk to each other. And when they don't talk to each other, a simple design of a product with the engineering team is how do you ensure recyclability? You do that by talking to the downstream processors who are going to have to take your products and recycle them for you. So that siloing has to be, those gaps in communication within a corporation need to be filled with those discussions and collaboration. And then for me personally, raising the next generation of green advocates, professionals and specialists to pass down institutional knowledge so that they can carry on the work when a bunch of us old fogies are ready to retire.
When is that going to happen anyway? I don't know. I still picture myself as a 34-year-old. I don't know why. I don't know why. It just happens. I can't help it. Can't help it. So now we're going to move to and thank you for those specific examples and specific objectives that we're beginning to get to. Doozy, I'd like you to explain the next part in the process here. If you'd like. We are going to take the results of all of our discussions here, and we want to get as specific as we can about action items and objectives, because we're going to take all of these and distill them into a plan, and then that plan will become a guiding document for the next year. So, Doozy, do you want to explain the next process, the next group activity we have here?
Sure. So earlier, Bill talked about the 3 policy goals and the 10 marketplace objectives that have been developed over the past several years at EarthX through these conversations. And what we're hoping today is to get some of your insights about how we should think about prioritizing these, and also maybe what new strategies or ideas we have for advancing them over the next year to 5 years. What we're going to ask you to do is we have Post-its at your tables and pens, and we'd like you to share some thoughts, how you would prioritize these goals, what strategies, allies, partners, ideas you have for advancing them, and then place them on the corresponding poster over there hopefully you guys can see that over on that side of the room. We have the 3 policy goals on the wall. And over here, we have the 10 marketplace goals on the wall. So once you have some thoughts, you can just put them up next to the corresponding goal. And then once we've done that, we will take a break, take some time to reflect and look at what everybody has put up there, and then have a conversation about what themes might have emerged and what recommendations you have for us going forward.
And the policy areas that we have developed here came from a process called America in One Room, and some other polling that was and America in One Room was an extraordinary exercise in deliberative democracy, the largest in the world, I believe. 962 people engaged together online in groups of 10 to hear about energy issues and to discuss them across all partisan boundaries. It was a representative sampling of the American population. And it demonstrated that when people come together and have conversations that they can come to conclusions. And where 70% plus of the folks in those conversations came down is that well over 80% of folks who support conservation. Everybody supports conservation. They want healthy rainforests, healthy oceans, healthy wildlife and wilderness and so on, whether they use different terms or not. They also support clean energy choices. They don't, for the most part, 70% plus people don't want to just choose one or two, whether it's oil and gas or solar and wind. They want clean energy choices because they know that it's that diversity that gives them resilience. And they also support a circular economy, the ideas of a circular economy. They're attracted to the idea of the circle, what it implies about life and continuity, and they love nature, quite frankly. Whether you're on the right or the left, you love nature. So those are the areas that 70% agree on. And then these 10 marketplace objectives have come out of the discussions that we've had over the past years about what can have the biggest impact when a retail or consumer brand makes a commitment to an area. Now, you're not limited to these by any means. You can certainly refine them and use this to your, don't feel constrained by this method. Feel liberated by it and do what you need to do. But let's get specific ideas down on the table so that we can then turn them into a plan. And then you'll have the opportunity to engage with others to help bring these into reality with less work than you would have had to spend failing otherwise. So,
Bill, I have a question.
Yes, yeah.
If we go back a few years, cigarette smoking was quite common.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like we'd be having a conversation among people saying there are no demons,
mm-hmm.
even though the tobacco companies knew that cigarette smoking caused cancer,
mm-hmm.
and they lied about it, just facts in their testimony.
Yeah.
To Washington.
Yeah.
And it sounds to me like you're saying we can't talk about the tobacco companies who know that they're lying and advertising.
Mm-hmm.
All we can do is talk about self-help.
Mm-hmm.
So let's all just get some good ideas about self-help because there's no demons.
Yeah.
But there are demons.
Mm-hmm.
There are people whose economic interest is to do the very things that you're trying to contradict very, very admirably.
Mm-hmm.
But we live in a society, and in a society you have laws to protect people.
Yeah.
If you don't understand who's creating the problem,
mm-hmm.
you won't create the laws or the movement to stop them from creating the problem. And we'll all be sitting here saying, what can we do as individuals because there are no demons?
Yeah.
But there are demons. In this case, there's science,
mm-hmm.
and the science shows that fossil fuels
mm-hmm.
are loading the atmosphere, and unless we stop doing that,
yeah.
there's no other solution.
There's no doubt you're correct on that.
So I just wonder whether this is a productive act. First of all, it's fantastic. I think it's optimistic. I don't mean it in a negative way.
Yeah.
But this notion of no demons would be much better for me to say, who are the demons and why are they motivated to bring the harm that we're all trying to contradict?
I think it's a great point, and we don't want it to be the elephant in the room, and I know that it can be. And I've been an activist all my life. I used to, I walked up and down the gas lines in, Jesus Christ, 1974 or something, calling for the government to split apart the big oil companies because I demonized the big oil companies, and I demonized Safeway. I didn't shop there for 10 years or something because they were damaging the civil rights leaders and the farm workers and so on. And however, as I began to engage with people who were in those demon worlds, I met people like Bill Coors at Coors Brewing Company, who was, you know, the designated demon of the left at the time. He and his brother, and I realized he had a secret plan to pass a bottle bill. He wanted to pass a bottle bill, and I go, how can you be the demon if you actually want to pass the bottle bill? And I realized that the demon is in the system more than it is in the people. Now, there are a few people who are actual demons, but they're usually weeded out because people like the Wizard of Omaha, Warren Buffett, thank you, Warren Buffett. I mean, he wants high integrity people to be leading companies. So when you have a demon running a company, you usually kick them out because they're friggin' demons. But you do have lots of systemic incentives to do the wrong thing. And if you're in the fossil fuel industry and you need to, you know, turn in a profit so that the investors, you know, and the investor companies that work with people like me to make sure I have my retirement funds, you know, have our money, then they have to do those things. So to me, it's a process of minimizing the demon, because you kind of need a demon, you know, to focus on. And that's why I say the political industry, because it's small enough in number of people that we can demonize them and not, you know, not worry too much. But we do need a demon, and there are legitimate, actual individual demons, but there are more like business models that are demonic, and the people who are part of those, it doesn't help us to say they're demons because they're stuck saying, like, what can I do? What can I do? It's better to say, you want to do some good things for your kids. What can we do collectively to change the signal that's causing the demon process to happen? That's my thought. Yeah.
I'll just add, I think another thing I would suggest, and I say this with love as a 40-some-odd-year veteran of oil and gas, and the head of sustainability for over a decade for a fairly large company.
Pretty big. It was a pretty big company.
Pretty big company. I will say with love that I think there's plenty of demonization going on, and I think part of your point, Bill, is just not today.
Mm-hmm.
Let's try to actually get the brains in the room today, and make use of the knowledge that comes from folks who work all across that spectrum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And by the way, I think if you call somebody a demon, they have excuse to be a demon. And I think that can make things worse. You know, if the expectation is you're going to be evil, it's like, oh, good, I can do whatever the hell I want because they already think I'm a demon. So.
I think this is an extremely important discussion that over the years I've learned to not demonize, and I annoy people by not demonizing our president, for example. But about 15 years ago, I was working with Citizens Climate Lobby, and one of our citizen advocates was the VP of Exxon who did the merger with Mobil.
Mm-hmm.
And that was interesting. And it turns out he's the reason that New York State doesn't allow fracking. Because as an individual, his heart is in the exact same place. He checks up on me periodically. How's it going, Peter, on restoring the climate? He complained about whatever the president of Exxon was doing. Because, as you said, the structure, he said, listen, the oil companies, they're just there to make money for their shareholders. That's their entire job. Mm-hmm. And if you can get them to sell solar and make their shareholders happy, they don't care. They're not trying to destroy the planet, but it's the structure. And then the question is, how do we shift the structure?
Mm-hmm.
And what I've seen in my climate restoration work is, that our brain is designed to always look for the blood. If it bleeds, it leads. Mm-hmm. And we see that everywhere. And that means that the IPCC tells us that our climate is going to hell. Pardon my French. But really, what we want is to focus on getting CO2 back to safe levels. And it will eventually. Hopefully, our intention is that it gets back to safe levels before it's cockroaches. But if it is cockroaches, that'll happen anyway. The point is, the predictable future is it will go back to normal, but we want to have people picturing that future and then structuring our structures consistent with that future that we want, not the future we fear. And Bill, this is what you're doing.
Yeah.
Is you're actually allowing us to say, we do have these fears. Let's put those aside because we're humans and we have fears. Now let's talk about what we want and make that on front page news. And thank you for doing that, Bill.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. It just, my experience has been when we were in California, we were trying to pass the bottle bill, and we had these years of demonizing each other. And Mark and Murray will remember some of this. But I had these lobbyists, 20 lobbyists from 20 different industries, all working in a room, and they were devising a law to actually solve a problem. They said, this is like the most refreshing thing I've ever been able to do in my entire career, is to actually write a law to solve a problem. It was so refreshingly different for them, and would change people's lives in really positive ways as they learned to do this. And it was because we didn't demonize them. We just said, look, you're in a business model right now where you make a lot of money by having things thrown away that ends up in the trash, that ends up on the streets, that ends up just spoiling your reputation. Maybe we want to create an incentive for people to go the other way, and we'll all feel really good about our work. And that happened, and I've seen it happen over and over again. I keep looking for the demon. Every time I go into a pocket with a demon, they say, well, look over there. That's where the demon is. I go over there. They say, look over there. There's the demon. And you end up in a circle. Like, oh, the demon is the system. It's the future. The demon is the incentives in the system. And if the system is destroying itself, then the people inside the system have to say, oh, maybe we want to make a change. And we're not trying to hurt those people over there, because they're going to run away. We want to help them feel better and be better, and they just feel better overall. So.
Bill?
Mark.
Yeah, I wonder if on this demonization issue, so again, Mark Murray with Californians Against Waste, many years of arguable success in the policy arena, and I have had to use the demonization to raise money. That's the system that I work in. I have to use that to raise money. I have to use that to increase our social media hits. But it is a terrible strategy for advancing policy. And I actually think it's a terrible strategy for winning over voters. And so I talked yesterday about the idea of inside voices and outside voices, and I think that if you want to be successful in advancing policies, that you have to be aware of the demonization is a strategy right now for raising money, and both sides use it, but it's not the way that you actually advance the policy. You have to work collaboratively, and you even sometimes have to explain to your enemies, I have to do this in my, don't pay no attention to our social media, pay no attention to our email blasts. That's for raising money. I'm a normal human being with a couple of kids, and I worry about the same things you worry about. Let's figure out a solution to this.
Yeah.
So Bill, just one final, I totally applaud your point. And if you keep individuals out of it, you say, well, it's not individuals, but it's systems. So would you consider a legitimate effort to end Citizens United as an example?
Oh God, yes. Well, personally.
Yes. No. So
it's the
maybe
dumbest
maybe that's
policy.
where that's where the bridge is. I agree with you that people are just following the incentives that they have.
Yeah.
But as a society, we create those incentives. And right now, one of those incentives is creating the problem. I would say Citizens United.
Yeah.
So if within your construct of positive change, ending Citizens United can go up on one of those boards, that's a systemic change that could make a difference.
I think it's a great example of a systemic change. The idea that corporations are people, that collections of individual legalized, incentives and disincentives equals a person is absurd. And so, that's just plain wrong, incorrect and wrong.
I really tried to throttle myself back here. But this demonization issue got me, and responding to what you were saying, okay, history, conservative Republican, so there's at least two of us in the room. Elected official in North Carolina, NC House for 10 years. The problem with demonization is, when you attack me personally, even though I'm an elected official, I'm a human being. I take it personally. Okay, so you attack me and you come and tell me, oh, it's just to raise money. It's like, okay, there's a door. Don't let it hit your ass on the way out. I mean, seriously. I've knocked on thousands and thousands of doors. You open the door. You know what they want to know? They want to know, if I vote for you, what are you going to do for me? That's what it comes down to. I would suggest, rather than demonization, be more positive. And I know it doesn't raise as much money. I'll admit that wholeheartedly. But you get personal with me, it's like, I'm not going to listen to you. I don't care who you are, where you come from, what your background is. Because elected officials are only human. They're not Superman, they're not anything else. Yeah, my name's John Succa. Okay, here's what I'm going to do for you. That's all they want to know. I've raised more money off of that than demonizing people. I've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for my own campaign and for others to keep it positive. Maybe I could have raised 3 times as much, but then I couldn't sleep with at night and wake up with a clear conscience in the morning. So try that once, and if it doesn't work, well, you can blame me.
Hey, there you go. And I think the other thing to realize is if you do full cost accounting, demonization doesn't always pan out even from a fundraising perspective, because you're raising as much money for your opponents as you are for your own campaign. You know, when we raise $1,000 by demonizing an industry, the lobbyists love that, because they go in and they say, well, look what the other side is doing. They're demonizing you. You better hire me to now, counter demonize or protect your reputation or so on. And all of a sudden you have a more well-funded opposition than you had before. So it's one of the good reasons that somebody like Mark will tell them, look, we don't believe our press releases. Randy Hayes from Rand Force Action Network used to tell me this too. Don't believe your press releases. Your press releases are there to create a targeted response. They are not there to tell necessarily the objective truth. They're there to trigger a response. If you're not triggering the right response, stop doing that press release. It's not going to do the job. Yeah, Peter.
This is, again, a very rich conversation. What I've seen in our climate restoration work, and I started out figuring out what were the economic levers we could use to restore the climate, and I could never find one. And I realized that my parents were both economists, Harvard educated and so on. So I grew up, that's how you do it, is with economics. And I realized on the climate that we have to figure out who's the customer. Who are we doing it for? And we're doing it for our kids. We're not doing it for money. In economics, we forget that it's just a symbol, the money is. A way to do digital accounting, which is important. But the fundamental thing is we want humanity to flourish. We want our children to flourish. And I recommend that we keep that in front of us, starting here, that what we call humanity flourishing for millennia to come. So it automatically gives you a circular economy. Humanity can't flourish unless we have a circular economy, absolutely. And so that then can redesign our structures, which, since Adam Smith, were designed to maximize income and assets. And that made sense in 1776, obviously, but it doesn't make sense now. And I offer that we reorient rather than, money is important, clearly, but keep putting our focus on future generations, on humanity flourishing.
I think they're right, and one of the reasons that I think it's so important that we help to tap and organize mom, and not empower moms, but help moms realize how much power they have, is because moms as a concept, and again, it can be a gender, you can be a male or a female to exercise this, but moms care more about the health of their children than anything else. And they will kill, they will destroy in order to advance the health and well-being of their children. Nothing will stop them. And that's the right, we need that as an objective in our culture now. I think we need that as a framework for our culture. Like, we want to protect the health and safety of our children because that's the future of us, it's the future of nature. And so we need to organize moms into a force as a framework for the future, not because moms are better, or women are better, or anything like that, but simply because we've had rationality as the objective, financial or material affluence as the objective, because it used to be that that was the best way for us to provide for our children, but now, you know, it's not really working out that way. So maybe we need a framework where that's the goal, and then within that framework we want to profit maximize toward that. Yes. And as we go here, I love this discussion, and I want to add one element to it if I can as we go, to make suggestions for specific objectives. Like, for example, we had oppose Citizens United. You know, maybe build a bipartisan understanding of the effect that Citizens United has, so that conservatives understand that it's as much of a threat as liberals maybe do. But other ideas like that we can bring into our plans potentially. Yes.
I don't know that I have a great policy suggestion, but I'm also struggling with the idea of not demonizing. The current administration is actively using the power of the federal government to attack and criminalize people. I just got a message. I'm a local elected official in Austin, Texas. Bridget Shea, County Commissioner in Austin, Texas. Our Democratic Party chair sent a note telling every candidate that they need to download any data that they have saved on Act Blue, which is the chief Democratic fundraising tool, because Trump has sicked the Department of Justice and the FBI on the founders of these organizations and is threatening to put them in prison.
Yeah.
And they are shutting down. They're shutting down Act Blue by midnight tonight.
Are they? Yeah.
And that's the main fundraising tool for the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
So these threats are foundational and systematic and extremely dangerous and authoritarian.
Yeah.
And I don't
totalitarian.
know exactly
even,
totalitarian. I don't know how long we can continue to say, well, we'll try and see both sides on this. This is a direct attack on democratic institutions.
Yes. And I think it's perfectly legitimate to put that on the table, and even to consider that there might be individuals who are demons themselves, and who might manipulate the system in order to, carry that out. The challenge happens when we take an entire group of people and say, you're demons, or you're all demons, or the 47% of you, who voted this particular way are demons. We don't necessarily win them, win their hearts and minds by doing that. Theo.
I don't think I have a microphone, but I'll say, oh, do I? There we go. First of all, we're in uncommon times, and we are in an extreme situation. What I can tell you is that the desire to demonize is based on a real boundary being violated and crossed. And that rage is good information. What you do with the rage has everything to do with the outcome. Certain extreme situations require a fighting spirit, and there's no way out of that. What I have noticed is that even in such an extreme time, there are fracturing coalitions that enabled this situation that are more open to hearing another perspective and forming counter coalitions than ever. And demonization of broad groups would actually get in the way of forming the necessary coalitions to unite and fight the fight that's before us. And that was a hard lesson for me to learn. And the guy on stage is very much responsible for me opening my eyes for that. But right now, the fighting spirit is good. Getting pissed off is good. The fire is good.
Yeah.
Now, what do we harness with it?
Yeah. That's where I'm an angry, impatient individual. I am seething with anger at what is wrong. I seethe with it. I have since I was a kid. It pisses me off. And I want to make change happen right now. And I've only learned over time to channel all that through this complex internal matrix of don't destroy yourself and other people in the process of trying to get good to happen. So don't ever imagine that I'm not angry at what's wrong. I am so angry and I have been so angry from the very beginning. And certainly in my teenage years when I saw totalitarianism encroaching, I thought that is something we have got to stop. And here we are in the country that was supposed to be the counterforce to that. And totalitarianism, the government having controls of the means of communication. And I look at us now and I think, well, we've done totalitarianism even better. We've got, not that the government is in charge of communication so that people only hear one story. We have a system where there are two stories. They're the contrary to each other. They keep the people at war, and the people are now so involved in being outraged toward one another that while we're all being outraged toward one another, the money just keeps flowing out. And it's easy to spend government money, but it's not very easy to stop the flow of government money. So, that to me pisses me off. And the way to counteract that is to awaken people to what's going on, and to give people an alternative to the rage that's being triggered in us for very good reasons, as you indicated. There are plenty of reasons to be outraged at the overtness without being, partisan, because I do think one party does it in a very covert way, the other one is doing it in a more and more open way, but and these are all my personal opinions, by the way, they have nothing to do with any institution that I'm involved in, but that's all happening, and we should all be outraged about that. But we shouldn't be outraged at the people that are engaged in it, except for maybe a few, because that's the way the system is operating. We can only be outraged at the people who don't have the courage to say, this is the truth, this is what's actually happening, and let's figure out what to do about it. To me, that's it. I don't expect people to take actions that put themselves out of business so the worst, rise to the top. I want everybody, to be doing their business the way they need to do their business, but to be able to say, here's a flaw in the system that we all need to deal with. I can't do it by myself. I need your help. You can't do it by yourself. You need my help. How do we do it? So that's what we want to do out of this, is find these systemic malincentives and correct them. So, we've had a great conversation here so far. I want to get us to pragmatic steps that we can move on. Yes.
So again, thank you. So pragmatic, and this is the reason why I also inspired to be here, is I'm working in Texas on elevating the regenerative finance chapter. For this is a global initiative that activates chapters all over the world. I have done it for Colombia, Miami, in Florida, and now here in Austin, Texas. And what that is a community-driven chapter giving resources on early stages for regeneration for projects in early stages. So if you guys are VCs or investors here, this is the efforts that are previous efforts to your investment. So the way it works is maximizing the fundraising for these projects through Ethereum and Web3, and precisely Ethereum, not Bitcoin. This is completely different than Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. This is for public goods.
Yep.
And as long as your project can leverage your followers, your network, and your community, you can get match tons of funding for your project at the early stage. So just quick example, super quick example. If you have 10 donors with $10, you will raise $100 at the end of the round. You will get match another 100 from the organization for a total of $200. If you have 100 people donating $1, then the organization will match up to 100x because you leverage your critical mass and your community. So this is how projects have been getting up to $80 million around the world in this model, and we're activating that for Texas. We want to expand that. Thank you.
Good. That's an idea that we want to get up on the board. We're going to take a break now for 15 minutes. During that break, if you don't mind, give some thought to specific objectives you may want to set, and fill in what do we call it? The rubric. Thank you. Fill out the rubric for us so that we have that and we can gather that together. But let's take a 15-minute bio break and personal break, and then we'll come back for our final moments to shape together our plan for next steps. All right. Thank y'all.